It has an ECG thing, track your heart rate.
Thank you.
Yes. No, this was.
Good camera. Beautiful sun and these beautiful plantains. So this isn't like autofocusing, so I don't want to be distracted. But my interest in
There's a fly moving around here.
the bee.
Don't need to be the bees.
There's a bee.
The bees and the birds. All right. So talk to me.
All right. Well, Grace, thank you for this food we're about to receive in nourishment of our bodies. This is your coffee. This is my coffee. Yeah. Thank you for this food, guys. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So I don't have a formal introduction kind of situation for this. I am Eurila. I am an artist.
That's right.
I am orbited by other amazing artists, to which you are, Mr. Ernest Danjuma
Enebi.
Enebi.
Carter is my old moniker.
Oh, moniker. So it's not your actual name, Enebi. Enebi. So, being in Brooklyn from Nigeria is a different experience probably than being from Brooklyn in Brooklyn right now. So, what I really, really would love to hear from you about is what I feel is a circle within a circle. In my experience, it doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but I feel like there is a little bit of a separation, culturally and community-wise, at least in terms of those that I've encountered. So I wanted to see if that's true, or maybe I'm imagining it, and find out from you what your thoughts were on, or what your experience has been dealing with American Black people, and even other Nigerians in Brooklyn.
So, well, thank you, Eurila. Obviously, we've known each other for a very long time now, maybe going back 10, 12 years now.
Ooh,
since I moved to the US. And at that time, I lived in Harlem. And so I'm gonna take you back there before I kind of bring you back to where we are now, and then hopefully that tells the story of whether or not there is a disconnect, or what my own experience has been like. So I moved to New York from Boston. I moved to the US from Nigeria, maybe 21 years now, and went to school in Boston for a couple of years, and then moved to New York.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Northeastern University in Boston. And I'd always sought out, I think the first place I found community, even in Boston, was amongst, at the African American Institute in Northeastern University. And it was this sort of oasis in, what was a majority white school, but in a majority Black part of Boston.
A majority white school in a black neighborhood.
In a Black neighborhood, which it was gentrified out of this majority Black, neighborhood, Roxbury.
So they didn't even start in Brooklyn.
So there's a lot of layers to where I started my own American journey.
Right.
And so I think that always informed how I looked at things, and the kind of sort of messaging that I sought to kind of further through my own storytelling, through the way that I live, through the way I built my community, the way all of these different things. And so when you start there, a lot of the people that you're meeting, I was just talking, my friend downstairs, Alex, who you met. We were roommates in college.
Okay.
So we met in school. He's half Haitian, half African American. So he was the first person who was like, well, what's your African name? And I was like, I don't understand. Like, my name's Ernest. And for him, it was just like, how are you from Africa and your name, you got an English name? And that didn't sound weird. That didn't sound bizarre to me at all.
Right.
It was only in those moments where I started to be like, okay, I see how there's this interplay of, colonialism and, and
tribalism for that matter, right?
And Africanness in play. And so that was the first time that, I started to, identify myself as Danjuma, right? Because then I was like, okay, well, what's my middle name? Danjuma is my middle name. Nobody had ever called me that, but nobody ever needed to call me that.
But we love it.
And so, there's still people now. I was just thinking last night. There's still people now who would insist on calling me Ernest out of this sort of, well, his mama called him that. That's why I'm gonna call him. And I was listening to a podcast of Ta-Nehisi Coates and Trevor Noah, and they were kind of going back and forth, and one of the topics they explored was bleaching on the continent. And
that's an interesting discussion.
How that, where that comes from. And so I was like, we would never insist on somebody bleaching themselves, but we're insisting on this sort of colonial name.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just thought that was interesting. That was interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Boston, and I moved to New York. Alex is originally from New York, by the way. So he had always talked about New York.
Alex.
New York. Alex, my friend, who we went to school with. He's from New York. He's from Rockland County.
Oh, okay.
And so I moved here. First place I moved to is Harlem. And there is nowhere in America where Africanness and African Americanness kind of intersect like Harlem, right? It really is a place where all of African American history, the Black Renaissance, comes into stark relief with
the Black Renaissance,
the African Renaissance, in America, right?
Yeah,
and I'm living right there in Central Harlem
in 2000
in 2003, 2004. So it's fresh. So 2010, 2011.
Right.
And so we're living in this time. That's still majority. These guys are kind of just starting to build community there. They've been there for a while. They're starting to become, these are the African, the Senegalese and the Gambians and the Ivorians and, mostly Francophone West Africans. So that's where I come into New York. And come into
right
this
in the middle of that.
Right in the middle of that. And I start to kind of, in building my own community, some of the people I meet are the Africans who, Abiola, which is how I met you. He creates this...
The book club that ended it all.
Right? The book club that ended it all. We start this book club, which is this perfect mix of the Africans and the African Americans, which we weren't even really seeing as that, right? Because we were exploring topics, we were exploring literature that spoke to some of, a lot of the struggles, some of the books we read, where we were reading some, literature by African Americans. We read Ta-Nehisi. We met Ta-Nehisi Coates.
The Roving Tree. We did Blink.
We read Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath. I think that's where we started.
It wasn't Blink?
It wasn't Blink.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think David and Goliath was a book that came out, which really created this this book club. And all of that to say, we start exploring books. We did read the book. It was called Blind Spot.
Blind Spot. I know it's a B in there.
We also read The New Jim Crow.
Yeah.
If you remember.
I do.
And we would have these hot topic debate subjects where we were forced to kind of grapple with And these are, I mean, Abiola went to Howard, right? You had Dio, who's Nigerian American. He grew up in, Florida. You had all of these different people who had experiences rooted in America.
Yeah.
And so the way that I started to see us was not, it's some people over there, it's us over here, we're in competition, or, they used to call us African booties, all of that narrative that we sort of elevate to the top.
Yeah.
My experience was primarily we are doing the work of bringing our communities together. We're doing the work of being consciously together, and this is the first time we've ever had such a conversation, because a lot of our time has been focused on how are we building each other, how am I getting you work, how are we, so when people talk about these things outside these broader societal issues, which no doubt exist, right? These tensions exist. The root of the tensions are real, they're valid. The African Renaissance is real, Afrobeats, African food, all of these things are real. I always urge people to think, what is your own experience, right? So when they say, oh, most African black men love white women, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's your experience?
Right.
Are you with a white man?
White man?
People is your brother.
Right.
Are they with white? So we're all too willing to move away from our own personal experience. When they say, oh, black people don't do business with each other.
It's not true.
But you're consciously always trying to support black businesses.
Right.
Most of the people, 90% of the people you're interacting with on a daily basis.
Where do you think these narratives even come from?
But it's the broader society, which is why my good friend Mo Yahya called it it's a psychology of progress.
Okay.
If you don't train your mind to see or to focus on your experiences, other people's experiences will define how you experience the world. And it's, what do they call it, the red card theory or whatever.
Okay, right.
The thing that you focus on, you start to think, oh well, there's a lot of XYZ in this world.
Yeah.
And in reality, I maybe it's because I'm an optimist in this sense of the word.
Right.
And so I'm always like, okay, we can focus on that, or we can focus on how
keep talking.
My community that I've built has always been around the sort of how are we coming together? What are the things that bind us? And beyond that, even how are we, when did this start? For how long have we kind of always come together and do things with each other? And if you do that research, you start to find, going back to the freaking 50s and the 60s, before the internet, before all of these things, that deliberate work has always been done. We've always kind of saw our mutual progress, as kind of interwoven. So that's my own experience, and that's what I choose to kind of focus on every day and try to drive that narrative.
I love that.
Wherever I can. So
my experience has been actually really awesome, right? Because growing up as a black person in New York City, in Brooklyn, there was sort of the implied relationship that we have, which is like we all get along, right? And then there's the one where the reality of strangers rears itself, and you don't know the difference between, is it because I'm new to you that you treat me this way, or is it because I'm different to you that you treat me this way? So it was a lot of self-discovery. I learned a lot about myself and other people through that experience of having the book club, meeting so many people from the diaspora in different places and different approaches to life. That was so refreshing and eye-opening, and it's why I work so hard to facilitate what I could for us. And that never really got clear. It's like, is it because we've never really bonded that we aren't better friends? Or is it the elitist, I'm sticking with my people part of it? Because, you're a stranger, that we don't have better relationships. And I'm speaking specifically about the people that I met. I can't speak to the entirety of Brooklyn.
Makes sense.
But that was my experience. Now, on another note, the approach to life that Nigerians expose me to kind of sort of answers that a little bit, and I'll explain why. So, with Nigerians in particular, the brilliance is at a astounding level. There's no self-consciousness, or very little. We'll say very little self-consciousness, very little self-doubt. Right? It's like, I have an idea, I'm moving on this idea is happening. There's nothing that's going to challenge it, that's going to make me slow down. I'm going, and I'm going hard. And again, I don't know if it's just the people that I met, but everybody's got degrees, everybody's got money, everybody's got like just personal power. That you just in awe of.
I have a theory on it, but I'll let you finish.
I'll continue. Right, to continue, the Black Americans don't have that. In the ones that I grew up with, they had to find it. They weren't necessarily born with this idea of personal power. Some of them still don't know that they have personal power, and it was that sort of exposure to luxury, to tech, to like qualities that weren't readily available to me, but readily available to someone in my same age range, same well, not maybe the same educational background, but when you think about what do you call it, like groups, peer groups, we were in the same peer group.
I got you.
So other peer groups in the same vicinity weren't thinking this way. They were thinking scarcity. They were thinking limitations. They were thinking white supremacy. And when Nigerians came into my life, it was just like, what is this? No, you can do anything, everything, and you will do it. And you will do it well. And how dare you doubt yourself? And I always felt that was because we weren't raised the same, right? So American Blacks had this heavy umbrella of slavery over them that they were carrying. Not only was it just shielding them from the sun, but they were walking around with it. And seeing how people could be raised without that was very interesting. It was just like, I feel like that's exactly why we're so different. It's because I don't know what Africans know about slavery. I actually asked this question before and heard that you didn't grow up with that narrative. Definitely. And I feel like that's a huge reason that Blacks in this particular age and stage have the troubles that they do. It's because even though we might know better, it's harder to not have that as a regular conversation or see the evidence of it in things that don't work out for you and the responses that people give you for whatever reason. So if it wasn't for the book club that ended, or book clubs, I may be in this limited stage of life. You know, I may not be, but I feel like honestly I wouldn't be. Like I found a new sense of not even purpose, but like the ease of the craft that I have is better understood as natural than learned, you know? And something about that feels like it comes from knowing that you could erase that story for a second. Like I actually started to adopt the idea that I was from here. Like my people, my lineage, my legacy didn't come over here. We was on this land before anybody came here. Like I don't know for how long, but the comfort that I have where I'm at just feels like I've been here. And I've never really understood how, even if the story was true that you came over on a boat, that's still a problem for you after 500, 600, 700 years, whatever the case is, because it's like, okay, you know that, so work around it. But that's just knowing that there's other ways to think available to you. I'm scared.
It's hot.
It's hot.
Yeah, so just you put it on the side and then maybe dip in.
Oh shit.
It's chin chili.
Woo! Chin chili. Ooh, hot pepper oil. Oh, wow.
I feel like we're hot ones.
It's good though.
Yeah, it's good.
When it's just a little taste,
Yeah.
I like it. So,
So I have a couple questions.
yeah.
How,
I could do that.
knowing where you are now,
Yes.
are you able to both navigate life, but also teach the other people that you, from your community, this new way of thinking? Or is it just something you inherently adopted and are kind of just moving in the way you do business or the way you live your life, and like where everybody else has their journey, let them live their journey?
Both. So what you start to notice is that you'll meet more people with your frame of mind. So it's a lot easier to move with what you've adopted, incorporate it into your life, and be in that.
Right.
Teaching people is a different story.
Right.
I've come into a situation just recently where I'm like, you're a black man.
Right.
You are God. You can do anything you want to in the world. You just gotta do it. Like, a lot of people don't realize that the story is a story.
Right.
It's a story, and how you receive yourself and how you project yourself is what your reality is. So if you project yourself with power, I am God, I'm a king, I can do whatever, I'm smart, I know I'm capable, that's what you'll be received as. And that's how they'll be treating you. Like, you know what you're doing. And they will step aside, allow you to shine, do your thing, and trust you, all of this stuff. But if you are skeptical, you will be met with things to be skeptical about. So it's really hard for somebody to take those glasses off and not see things as skeptical, not see themselves as limited, not see their experiences not enough, when they themselves don't know that they have the glasses on. So that's the part about teaching people. So I do my best to be an example of that in my living. And if anybody I've taught that to is my children,
I got you.
my daughters. So they have their little, you know, it still seeps in.
It's in your mind, right?
But they still have enough other information to go for
To counter that.
Exactly.
So here's, and as you were talking, a couple of things came to mind, and I may be all over the place, but hopefully I can land this plane. So the first thing is that I wonder if we are comparing, because the only Africans that make it over here, majority of the time, are the top of the top Africans in Africa. Right? This idea that it's poor people in Africa who are in search of an opportunity that make it over here is fallacy. That's not who's here.
Okay.
Right? Most of the people you meet who came here are going to be already the top of their class in Africa, in Nigeria, wherever.
Okay.
Right, so the people you're seeing, I don't feel like is a good representation of the broad, you know, the broad.
Considering, yeah.
So it would be like if I went to Howard and started thinking of African Americans as the people I met at Howard.
Right.
That's not really a representation of the African Americans in America, is it?
Okay. Not entirely.
Not at all. It's actually not at all the representation. Because if you went there, went to Howard, Morehouse, you know, and all the HBCUs, I've never seen a more confident and more self-assured black population than the population you will meet at those schools, at Spelman and all these places. Right?
I feel like those was learned though, but go ahead.
It is learned. That's pretty much what I'm saying is. So even if you take the black people you meet at Harvard, the black people you meet. So think of the top tier, the 1% of black people across the country. You gather them all in one room. Everything you're saying about blackness goes out the window. About African Americanness goes out the window because that's just not who they are. Their experience, yes, they probably still have, you know, a little bit of latent, you know, what's it called?
Reservation.
You know, the theory of, inferiority complex or whatever, but we all kind of do, if I'm being honest. So I always try to dispel this notion that Africans, Nigerians are coming and they're so confident and whatnot. Let me tell you, it's survival.
Okay.
It's I'm in front of a fucking lion. The lion smells blood. The lion's gonna fucking pounce on me. So I cannot afford. I'm terrified, but fuck that. I'm just going to move. Like a lot of people see me moving around, and I'm sauntering through Brooklyn or wherever I am, or around the world or whatever. It's not that I'm so confident in where I sit or in my. It's that. You know what? This is the life I'm choosing, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But it's a very, very isolated, it's a very, very narrow way of thinking. And I urge people to, I used to think Nigerians and Africans needed to travel more. I'm wondering if the rest of the world needs to come to Africa more. And that will kind of dispel these notions that you have, where you're like, oh.
No, it's true.
Oh, you got the exact same problems.
Right.
We all have the exact same problems, right?
I was thinking
the idea of when you're outside of your context. I'm only present in America for one task. Not life, not its success. Because if I don't make it here, I cannot go back to Nigeria.
Okay, because there's nothing there to go back to.
No. The embarrassment, the shame, like all of that stuff. I have to make it here. If I don't make it, I have to create the illusion that I'm making it here.
Interesting.
You're not riddled with that burden. So it's like, if you don't have that burden, you don't have that burden. There's no way of simulating the terror of having which is really what it is. It's terror of, this is my last chance. What excuse do I have? That I usurped all of these resources a lot of the time. Because if you read, there's a research done by the UN. It's called Scaling Fences, and it goes into the demographics of the Africans who are actually migrating to Europe. The study was on Europe.
Okay.
And it showed, that's where I got this idea that it's really the top of the top 1% of Africans that are from their communities that are leaving Africa because Africa can no longer contain their ambitions. That's the primary reason for migration.
I agree.
So the people you're meeting are the most ambitious people.
Anyway, right.
So to start comparing them to, the guy in Brownsville, it's just you're comparing apples and onions. You're not really comparing.
Because there is a guy in Brownsville in Nigeria too. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. So if you go to Brownsville, Nigeria, you get the exact same crabs in a barrel mentality. You get the exact same. It's the government. They're they're trying to keep us down. It's it's corruption. It's all of these things that are just in perpetual, that keep you in this perpetual cycle of, because it's not, if you're born to poverty in Nigeria, more than likely you will die in poverty, as is the case here. Right.
Interesting. Okay, right.
So I first want to dispel of the idea that, we have some, no, because you're comparing the wrong sets of people.
That makes sense.
You go to Atlanta, I'm fucking impressed by because most of the businesses I run into
black owned. Yeah.
And with no, it's not black owned the way we do here. It's black owned with a big ass black owned sign here. It's just black owned because black people own businesses in Atlanta.
Right.
And that's just what it is. There's no pomp and circumstance to it. Right. So I'm, you go to Howard, as I did when I was in school. You interact with a lot of people. You get outside of this bubble. You start to see, okay, most of the rich, there are just so many more wealthy, educated, successful Black Americans than
you realize.
Than we see. So for me, but I don't want to gaslight people into thinking this is not it's not a real thing that you're feeling. But when you encounter this reality, what you do with that reality is ultimately what matters. You're a storyteller, so what excuse do you have for not telling the story that you've encountered?
Right.
Which true. Hopefully is what you're doing now. Which is why, for me, I was very, very excited to, but you raise a very, very good point initially, which is why haven't we been much closer? And there's probably a little bit of, our lived experiences may diverge at some point, and the older you get, the more comfort you get in kind of the people who you grew up with, kind of people who you don't have to kind of explain it's all of that. But by and large, when immigrants, when Nigerians, when Africans come to America, what neighborhoods are they staying in? It's in the same places that we're growing up in, the same places, we're going to the same schools, we're struggling for the exact same resources. So there's going to be tension.
Right.
The scholarships, the government, access to healthcare, all of those things. We're in the same neighborhood, so we're struggling for the exact same resources. Right. It's just the person who has come here is better tuned in because they have no other choice. Right. They're better tuned in.
They will take risks
to access these resources that exist because I'm here for one purpose and one purpose only.
Right, it's to not die.
To not die, starve. And I cannot go back home without being successful. I think we underestimate that part. I cannot return home if I don't make it. And it's the same thing with Mexicans, with El Salvadorians. There's a bounty on my head a lot of the time because I took out loans. You don't want to know what that feels like because that's terror.
I guess.
As opposed to living life like, I want to succeed. If I succeed, I succeed. If I don't, you know what? I gave it a good shot. I did my best. I did my best. You don't have that. We don't have that luxury. Yeah.
That's interesting. That only because who does really have that luxury? But
no, your parents have access to healthcare here. My parents do not. So I need to figure out how to get them access to that healthcare. Your parents have access to Social Security. They have access, there is a safety that they have. Your siblings have that. My siblings do not.
Interesting. Because of just
my cousins, because none of is only one can go. A lot of the time.
And then bring it back for everybody else.
Or bring everybody along with you. So there's that pressure again of I gotta bring everybody else. So I'm sauntering out here. I got no business sauntering out here. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not even. There's no part of it that's funny. The pressure that you see, that you don't see rather, is heavy, and I've seen it break a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Africans.
Wow.
Yeah, I got friends around just mental health, homeless, because again, if you don't make it, you're better off just wandering the streets, sleeping in your car, hoping that you eventually make it. But we don't tell those stories.
No, we don't. What do you see value in those stories, or do you see more value in the struggle, where it's just okay, we're gonna do what we have to do. Right. We're gonna do what we can do.
I don't like the glamorization of the new. We've moved from Nigerian scammers and emails to Nigerians being this rich, wealthy group, and I'm just can we just be human beings? Can we just be somewhere? So there was the 419 boys, and then now there's just we're so loaded, we're so generous, we're so you need to get you a Nigerian man who's and I'm just guys. I'm just trying to survive.
I'm gonna blame you.
I think
why?
I think someone responsible for
that.
Yes,
because you're
this life of luxury.
Nigerian, and then you make it seem so effortlessly easy. And anybody who can subscribe to your idea can follow that, and they will, even down to the way you wear your hat. And so this is what creates. Listen, you're influential.
You can't look like your problems is what we grew up. Is what we grew up kind of. You know what I mean? So it's you have to mass. It's almost like going to church on Sunday. We're your Sunday best. Because again, we also move with the knowledge that how you arrive is how you're seen.
That's true.
And so we know, and those are things that, you can start to kind of tap into. So for me, we come here, we see we're constantly taking. And one thing I always say to my African friends, we're taking, like we're soaking up everything we see around us, right? And when we come here, we're looking at who's the most successful people, how are they moving in society. We're not coming here with any sense, there's no entitlement. And Trevor Noah was saying this, maybe we're not consumed by the civil rights part of the mix of what it takes to actually survive and succeed in America. So we're able to move more lightly. Yeah,
that's what I mean.
And but somebody has to do that work. So you don't get to, which is why. So I say to my Africans, just shut up and enjoy the struggles that have been, the ways that have been paved for you. When they get into sort of this African Americans are lazy, all this nonsense talk, I'm just like, now you've lost me. Yeah, like I'm not getting into that, because again, you're only able to, your very presence here is because somebody fought to make sure, and this goes beyond even Africans, it goes to other immigrant groups. Their presence here, the ease with which they're able to move in American society is because African Americans here fought for those freedoms. That's the fact. So if we're consumed daily by marches and civil rights and trying to craft bills and voting rights and all these different things that we end up kind of enjoying, we would be a lot less successful as well, because we'd be distracted by that too. You know what I mean? If we had to focus, if every time a cop stopped you. So Trevor Noah, in his interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, which I urge people to kind of listen to, it's on his new podcast. He was saying him and a bunch of his African buddies, they went to go play soccer here in New York, in the city. And they were walking back home, or they were driving back home or something. They got stopped by the cops. And the cops was like, hey, where you guys coming from? It was late at night, this night games that we used to play. Oh, where you guys coming from? They're like, oh, we're coming from a soccer game. Like, oh, where you going? They're like, oh, we're just going home. Do you mind if I search your bags? They're like, oh, of course. They search the bags. Then they was like, okay, you can be on your way. They start going and they go back to talking about the soccer game. No, Trevor, you have to pass the ball when you see me overlapping. And they had gone a little while, and he was like, guys, you realize what just happened there, right? They're like, what? Like, you know why we got stopped, right? Yeah. And it was only then that they were like, oh, snap.
Yeah, wait.
That's what the fuck was that? And because a lot of the time we're able to move, or we understand that, and we don't push back against the system.
Right.
I know, I don't know who's seen this, but there are probably some Africans who do push back against the system, so it's not everybody. But by and large, because again, even in all of the movements, Africans here have been part of those movements, right?
In some way.
So it's I don't want to, give this, but those Africans understand that our destinies are interconnected. They would never say the kinds of things you hear some people that cause some of these tensions. You know what I mean? And so so that's kind of how I've seen it. So I never, which is why I don't sort of participate in it.
And it's the not participating in it that helps create more opportunity for you to enjoy what happens here. And I think the part of that people who have been here don't really know how to navigate, one, or appreciate, two, is that if you don't kind of comply a little bit, it's just going to be harder for you. So you go into it with an attitude, because it's like, why are you here?
But there's no progress without pushing back against the system.
I agree.
Those two things are interconnected. The system hates that. But it's important to know this. All of this progress that we're enjoying and all of these things, there's no rise of Afrobeats without the struggles of hip hop.
That's true.
Before it. It just doesn't exist. And I'm not saying this at some, I've studied this empirically. These are interconnected. No.
What time is it?
Oh, 12:10.
I gotta read my what you call it? Yeah, but we can wrap up. We can wrap this up. That was amazing. I really love your perspective. I really love what you've shared with me, because it kind of answers. It answers all the questions that I had about how is it that you can come to America, not have the same upbringing, yet still feel like you're not conforming to the point where it's like, okay, we are just like the white folks. We don't know y'all black folks. Get over there, get away. Because that's how I can feel sometimes. It's just like, okay, look, we know what Hermes is and we know how to say it. You don't, so go sit down somewhere. Little black boy, little black girl.
So maybe it's my experience and that I talked about.
No, it helps a lot.
And not say it's a coincidence, because there is no path that kind of sets you on a journey where you end up as the only child. I was fairly already an open-minded because of my parents. Where we grew up in Nigeria I didn't grow up in Lagos. So the way that I grew up, I already grew up in an environment where I wasn't sort of the majority. So then I grow up, then I come to America. Coming to Boston is a very interesting place to be. Coming to Northeastern, of all the schools that exist, it's almost like going to USC, right? Where you have, that's the same kind of demographic that happens, where it's a majority white school that takes a little bit of land from, a black neighborhood, with this promise of this exchange, or we'll give you some scholarships, if we can just build our little school here, and then starts to pull back some of those things. And then me I grew up in a family that's very political. I don't know, people may not believe in, in astrology. I don't really, but I'm also Libra, so justice is at the core of how I live. So it's like, no.
You should believe in it.
That's not, no, but it's not the core thing for a lot of people. Like injustice rubs, like it's one of those things, how people are like, oh, I can't get over, like there's a lint on your jacket. That's what injustice is for me. I don't necessarily have to be personally connected to it, but I'm like, but no, you can't do that. And time after time in college, I was fighting this battle, and I'll give you this, I'll close with this story. That African American Institute we talked about, they were, it was a standalone institute, and they had fought, generations before had fought to keep that building as a standalone African American Institute in the mix of this, as the school was gentrifying and building around it.
Good.
The school had other ideas.
Of course.
They wanted to, it was around the time when they were trying to lump in all of the almost like a multicultural center they wanted to create. Right, they wanted to lump in the African American, the Asian American Institute, the Muslim American, the Islamic, all of these different societies. They wanted to put under one
like
roof,
a black plate
in a new building.
Right.
And the black students were fighting against this with the help of the dean of the African American Institute at the time, Dean Lula Petty Edwards. Amazing older woman, white, just smooth, beautiful energy, but a fierce fighter. And I remember the school tried to figure out, okay, how can we get around all of this noise that these people are making, because they're gonna do what they're gonna do. It's like,
right, it doesn't matter.
So while school's off in the summer break, they're like, this is the time to do it. So they're gonna remove her as a dean, because she was also opposed to this, and then start the work of kind of dismantling this thing. And as the international student that I was, I was like, yo, we still here. Y'all think everybody gone home for the holidays. What's going on here? Started to make noise. And I remember the vice chancellor, or the assistant, the vice president of the school, calls me into his office. Sits me down. He says, you know, and that's a big deal. Like for the vice president of the entire school to call you, one person who's like, okay, I want to hear why are you so passionate about this? And I never forget this. He said to me, from what I understand, because they bring your files, because they're like,
they pulled your transcript.
They pull your file. Like,
of course.
From what I understand, you're an African student. And this is really an African American fight.
What's that? It's not
really.
Is that what he said to you?
100,000%. I'll never forget.
What?
Yes, and that's what happens every day in corporate America.
Oh,
they tell me, and many times I don't think there's an African who hasn't heard, oh, you're a different kind of African. It's the good black.
That's terrible.
And it's very tempting
to fall into that.
You're different.
Do.
You're kind of different. There's something about you that's really different from, and you're like, oh, they like me. You know, yeah. So, sits me in there. But there's there's some threat in there.
Exactly.
Because like, it'd be a shame
to send your ass back. That's right, yeah, So, do you like it? Do you like it here?
Do you like it here? Is this fight really?
Like it here. Right.
And I said, listen to me.
That's the tactics.
If I go down for this is completely worth it.
Yep.
And I want you to understand, you cannot do this. If you want to do it, do it in the day. Don't do it at night.
Right.
This is a cowardly move.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that.
I'm not going to be part of, like, yep, you want to do it? I know you're going to end up doing it, but do it in the daytime. Let everybody be part of it. Let them see it. And then take take your rocks. Don't do it in the cover of night. Don't be a coward. You're going to do it. Do it in the daytime and then face the blowback. Which they eventually did.
Yeah.
Then tried to get they got, this other guy, and God bless him. He's, his dad, the center was named after his dad anyway, and he had gone to MIT, and then he also called me to his office and like, hey, listen, we're trying to do something here. There was ultimately they knocked down the African American Institute. They built something else there, but they got to keep the African American Institute as its own center. Okay. Which, I don't know what it is now. I don't know if they've eventually, because these people, they'll take time.
Right. They'll keep doing it though.
But they'll do it. And so that's ultimately where a lot of my beginnings in these things kind of started to coalesce, where you're like, they're playing us to social justice. Right. It's my understanding of the dynamics. It's divide and conquer. Yeah. It's it's all of these different things. And so I never really. I just focus on my own thing. Like, we're together, and we're gonna proceed together.
I love that. I do, because it's not often that everybody's gonna have that experience.
Correct.
To know that that's happening.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel like it is important that you continue to share that. Hey, look, like I saw a video on Instagram recently where these women were trying to like explain away their issues when a voiceover was like, "But you're being poisoned." Right, like, so it's not, you're not gaining weight because you're stressed, you're being poisoned, right? Like, you're not having a breakout because you had chocolate, you're being poisoned, like, and that's the poison that's over us collectively that we act like we don't have to deal with. Right. And then we start turning on each other.
We're closer to each other. It's easier to take down the thing you can see and take down rather than this abstract system. That is so abstract. But it's there. It's not so abstract. That's the thing, is it exists, but it feels so big that it's like, and I guess so in some ways it feels worse because it's one thing for a criminal to attack you, it's another thing for police to attack you. Yeah. It feels like when it's your person, it feels like there's a break of trust, which feels even more insidious. But at the end of the day, my eyes are focused on what's actually going on. So I try not to be distracted by a little difference, whether it's ADOS that comes up here, it's all of these different groups that are trying to sow division. My thing is, listen, we're together. That's my voiceover.
I love it. We're together.
But we're together.
Yeah, we'll keep it that way. Thank you so much for this beautiful afternoon.
My absolute pleasure. I hope
And
you
this
enjoyed
beautiful Saturday. I did, and this was actually really good. Yeah, because
that's my boys. That's straight from Nigeria. Chinchili, baby. That's the hot sauce.
It tastes really
good.
Hot
sauce of choice.
Okay, they're a sponsor for today.
There we go.
Yeah, after, I don't know, it must have seeped into one of the plantains. I was expecting the shock of my life because it was a whole drip, but I could taste it. It wasn't killing me. I like that. I appreciate that. And this was really good. And the coffee was good as well.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming over. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Happy Friday.
You know, appreciate that. There we go.
Yay. Now, I was just like, oh my gosh, my phone wasn't on airplane mode. Hopefully nobody called me. There's no weird shit. But these recording, we got the audio.